Hello, lovers of Black true crime. Let me welcome you to the Noir Nation. If I asked you to name me three Black serial killers, could you do it? What about a Black person that's pulled off a heist of epic proportions? Don't worry, I couldn't either. But being a lover of true crime and all things Black, I decided to combine these two passions into a true crime podcast exploring some of the most intriguing and lesser known criminal masterminds with a melanated leading cast. Each week, I will bring you the stories of some of the most prolific criminals you've never heard of. I'm your host, Renee Davis, and this is the Melanin Mayhem podcast. Hello, New One Nation. Your favorite country girl is back with another twisted tale of a nigga that was just too turned. If this is your first time joining us on the pod, welcome to the nation. And if you are a regular, hey boo. So this week's Melanin Mayhem Maker made me sit back and think about all the men that I've known over the years and how many of them could possibly be this man? I'm talking about the guy that's always around, a neighborhood fixture that everybody knows. And if they don't respect him per se, let's just say that they acknowledge that that's a all right dude. These all right dudes sometimes can jump off the porch, but we think that they are relatively harmless. Then all hell breaks loose, and it leaves you wondering, how the hell did I miss that? This week's is Mr. Anthony Edward Sowell, aka the Cleveland Strangler. Anthony Edward Sowell was born August 19th, 1959 in East Cleveland, Ohio, to Claudia Benson Garrison and Thomas Sowell. Anthony had a half sister that lived with him in the house, as well as seven cousins that moved in after their mama died. Old Thomas Sowell throwed the deuces to all their asses, and he was never in the picture. They lived in a lime green house located at 1876 Page Avenue, and that bitch was full of violence and dysfunction. His mama and his grandmama, they used to beat their asses on a regular basis. And Anthony was just observing all the yelling and the screaming and the arguing and the cussing and the fussing. And that shit was an everyday activity. Oh, Anthony was a shit starter too. His cousins say that he used to do shit and then blame it on them, and they would get in trouble and he'd just stand back and watch them get beat. Ooh, honey, toxic dysfunction at its highest levels is what he grew up in. But how many times has a story started out like that? Too many to count. But in Anthony's case, his house of horrors included him and his siblings being tied up with extension cords and beat to death. He was also sexually abused by a woman named Princess when he was about 7 or 8. Her nasty ass. And that shit make a long lasting impression and sometimes manifests itself in horrific ways later in life. And it did so in Anthony's, I do believe. But Anthony, he wasn't no victim because one of his cousins says that Anthony regularly forced her to have sex with him when they were in their preteens. She said that shit happened almost every day. Now, Anthony dropped out of school in 1977. And he fucks around the neighborhood for a little while, and during all that fucking, at some point he got his girlfriend pregnant. But he wasn't meant to stay in East Cleveland long because when he turned 18, he, much like his father, throwed all their asses the deuces, and he went and enlisted into the Marines. Anthony joined the Marines on January 24th, 1978. Now, he was taught hand-to-hand combat and how to subdue a motherfucker by the military, aka the government. Wouldn't they be proud to know how he would put his training to use later in his post-military life? Anthony's daughter, because remember he left the girlfriend back home pregnant. His daughter was born September 16th, 1978, but Anthony wasn't there for her birth because remember he had just enlisted in the military. So he is away, he's not home with his kid, and in 1981, he basically said, fuck my baby mama, and married a woman named Kim Yvette Lawson on September 17th, 1981, they were in North Carolina. That's where they were stationed at the time. They stayed there for a while and eventually they were stationed in Okinawa, Japan for about a year in January of 1984. Come through, Mr. Miyagi. Wax on, wax off. That place. That's Okinawa. Well, Okim, she was a Marine too. But you know, y'all, I ain't want to talk that shit, but that marriage was doomed from the start because she was a touchy-feely type of woman, and Anthony didn't like to be touched. And she told her mama that the only reason she married him is because she thought he needed somebody to save him from himself. Because even though he was thriving as a Marine, she was worried that he was going to drink himself into a dishonorable discharge. Now, he did not get that big D discharge, though. But in 1985, it would turn out to be a pivotal year because him and his wife left the Marines. But Madame took it a step further. She said, I want to be free from all y'all ass. And baby, she divorced his ass the day after she got discharged. When I say I want to be free, I said I want to be motherfucking free. Well, Anthony went back to his hometown in East Cleveland, and he's doing petty shit when he gets there. You know, he does like to drink, and he is arrested for shit like disorderly conduct back in April of '86, and he served 8 days in jail for a domestic violence charge in 1988. I'm talking a whole slew of disorderly conducts, DUI, public drunkenness. You know, the stuff that comes around when you like the bottom of a bottle? He was a drunk that liked to chase it though with a little piece of crack from time to time. Well, I know you're probably thinking, nay, this don't sound too prolific. What makes Anthony a big dog? Well, y'all know I do not bring nothing on here half-ass, so I'm gonna need you to sit back and hang on, cause baby, it's gonna be a bumpy ride. Now, there was some shit going on in the East Cleveland area now. During this time, and I'm talking about the late 80s, East Cleveland was 90% black. And between 1985 and 1989, women, mostly users of the crack rock, were coming up missing. But of course, the police department didn't really try to find out what was happening to these sisters. We all know that song all too well. Well, in May of 1988, 36-year-old Rosalind Garner, her body was found around the corner from Anthony's house. Ooh, shit. And then, a year later, February 27th, 1989, the body of 27-year-old Carmela Prater was found, again, around the corner from Anthony's house. Then, on March 28th, 1989, the body of 27-year-old Mary Thomas is found. And guess where they found it? You got it, around the corner from Anthony's house. All three women were members of the crack smoke crew, and their cases were never solved. That's a surprise, right? In 1989, like I said, Anthony don't really have much going on. He is keeping his head above water, but living his new life post-military, he out there in these streets a little bit because, you know, he's a man that likes the company of a woman, and he wasn't a bad-looking guy. Women gave him some play, right? And even when they didn't want to fuck around with Anthony, he had a particular way of getting what he wanted. So on July 22nd, 1989, a 21-year-old pregnant woman tells police that Anthony had raped her 4 months prior, right? She says that she met him at a local hotel where her and her boyfriend were staying. She said that Aunt told her that her boyfriend was waiting on her at his house, which was right across the way from the motel. So she was like, all right, let's go. So when they got to Anthony's house, her boyfriend was nowhere to be found. She says Anthony choked her and raped her over and over and over again. And when she tried to leave, he bound her hands and her legs with a tie and stuffed a rag in her mouth. But what you gonna see is that Anthony has a little problem. You see, his ass always needed a nap. Y'all know how some men are when they, shall I say, release. They tend to fall asleep. And if you add in drinking some malt liquor all day, that's the perfect recipe for a sleepy ass nigga. So after he got done, he went to sleep. And the girl was able to wriggle away and escape out the window, which is also another theme that you are going to hear several more times in this story. Now, a grand jury did indict Anthony for this crime, but he didn't show up for court. So they put a warrant out on him, right? But the police said that they couldn't find Ant, even though he lived in his house every goddamn day. Okay. Then there was a woman by the name of Melvette Sockwell. Now, Melvette met Anthony in 1989 too. He was a client of hers. Now, I am not sure what type of work she was doing for Anthony. Maybe she was an accountant or a tax preparer or something. I don't know. But whatever it was, she met Anthony and she thought that he was a nice, regular dude. So she did some work for him. Little did she know how wrong she was about Ant. After completing whatever work that she was doing for him, Anthony paid her the money for the work that she did, and then he attacked Melvette. For the next 3 days, he held her captive in his home, raping her and beating her repeatedly. On the third day, Aunt woke up and told her that he was planning on feeding her and then killing her. So she needed to go ahead and get right with the Lord because she would be seeing him soon. Then what the nigga do? He went to sleep. Melvette realized that it was now or never, and she went out the window to freedom. She waved somebody down that was passing by and begged them to help her. And thankfully they did. Melvette escaped what was in store for her because this nigga took a nap. Now Melvette does press charges and Anthony was arrested. But around this same time, Melvette was going through her escapade with Anthony. Police found the body of a woman that was cut up into pieces in a suitcase around the corner from Anthony's house. Coincidence? I think not. For Melvette, he was charged with attempted rape in early 1990. While he was out on bail, awaiting his trial for Melvette's rape, on June  24th, 1990, another woman told police that Anthony had raped her. Now, she says that she went to his house willingly. She said they were kicking it on the sofa and drinking a little something, and Anthony goes, he gets up, and he walks behind her. And all of a sudden, he starts choking her. He is telling her that she is his bitch and all the shit that he is about to do to her. He grabbed her by her hair and drug her upstairs and violated her in every way that he could multiple times. All the while he's doing this bullshit, he telling her she better learn to like it. But just like the last time, when he finally got done, the nigga went to sleep. The woman was able to escape, and she came back with the police first thing the next morning, and they arrested his ass. But charges were never filed because the woman, she disappeared. Now, when it was time for him to go to court for Melvette a few months later, they ended up giving his ass 15 years. And he tried for parole several times, but they denied him every time. But we were talking about coincidences, right? It's coincidence that when Anthony went to prison, the women stopped going missing. Well, right before Anthony was supposed to be released, in June of 2005, when he was 45 years old, the prison gave him a psych evaluation. And that evaluation determined that Anthony was unlikely to rape anyone else ever again. But even still, because he was in jail for rape, he had to register as a sex offender when he got out. And so he goes back to East Cleveland, but this time he don't go to his childhood home. This time he go to where his daddy's widow stays, a woman named Sigourney Sowell. She had a house over at 12205 Imperial Avenue. And so that's where Anthony begins the second act of his life. And on the surface, it looks like Anthony might actually be reformed. Because you see, from 2005 to 2007, man, when I tell you Anthony came out the pen and hit the ground running, he did. He got a job over at the rubber factory and he got a girlfriend. And I ain't talking about just any chick neither. Anthony came all the way up like Remy Ma and Fat Joe, baby. He was dating the mayor's niece, a woman named Lori Frazier. And Lori got it going on, right? She is the mayor's niece. So Anthony is walking with people in a different income tax bracket. You know what I'm saying? He going over there to the mayor's mass ball and shit. All he gotta do is keep on keeping on and don't fuck this up, and he will be on Easy Street, right? But I have to wonder, did Lori know she was dating a registered sex offender? I wonder, did she know that he was fresh out the joint? Well, maybe that fresh out part was what got her. Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, that dick been put up for 15 years. That dick was definitely dicking when it came out. Probably blowed her back out, and Lori forgot all about that little piece of nasty work about him being a sex offender and all that shit. Or maybe it was because Lori, who is described as a former crack user, was dibbling and dabbling a little bit, cause she said that Anthony took care of her real good and treated her like a queen. Maybe they was on some Bobby Brown and Whitney type of shit. He was trying to keep her clean and whatever she wanted, if she asked him for a little piece of something, he would get it, but he wouldn't tell nobody, right? So Lori lived with him in his house on Imperial Avenue. And Anthony was happy. He cut off all his little chick friends that used to come over there and he would entertain them. They come over to the house and Anthony be like, oh, no, 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 I have a woman now. You're going to have to go somewhere else with that, right? And it's living good. Shit is looking good. Till it wasn't. You see, in 2007, Anthony lost his job. Now he got to go around and pick up scrap metal and sell plasma and sperm and shit for money, right? Then Lori broke up with him. Maybe our good sis came back to her senses, or maybe the victimization had worn off. Niggas without a dime to their name know how to lay that pipe. I don't know. I'm just saying what I heard. But anyway, Anthony is single again. Yeah, he is a fuck nigga that's free. Or whatever that was that Glorilla had said. But I don't think he really took this shit too well. We know that Ant is prone to go upside a bitch head. But in this case, social status being what it is in this country, he probably knew better than to fuck with Lori because her people, the mayor, would put that ass back in prison with the quickness. But just because he couldn't take that shit out on Lori, don't mean he didn't take it out on somebody else or a bunch of somebody else's. They caught all that smoke. And then a terrible smell starts taking over the neighborhood. That smell hung over Imperial Avenue for years. Years, I tell you. And nobody thought it was suspicious. You see, at first they blamed the smell on Ray's sausage factory. That was across the street from Anthony's house. They said it must have been a septic issue. Baby, sewer septic smells are a whole nother smell than death. Again, I have personally never smelled death, but by all accounts, it has the particular potency to distinguish itself from other funkiness, right? So putting the blame on the sausage factory don't seem kosher to me, no pun intended. Especially when the people at the sausage factory, I'm talking about the people who work there, they saying it's not us. We work in this building. The building don't stink. The outside stink. The inside don't stink. Well, that rumor persisted for so long that Ray, it was called Ray's Sausage Factory. Ray said, man, this some bullshit. Let me spend this little money to clear my name. And the sausage factory spent about $40,000 to $50,000 to have the goddamn drains and septic system replaced entirely. I'm talking they ripped out every damn drain pipe and replaced them all. Brand spanking new. You could have ate soup out them pipes, but the smell was still there. Of course the smell was still there. It wasn't a goddamn sausage factory. But on a side note, they asses was still eating meat from the sausage factory. How did y'all think the sausage factory smelled like death, but y'all still patronizing them and eating that shit? If you thought it was so damn nasty to smell up the neighborhood, how the hell you eating there? Or maybe they were, and that's why Ray had to spend them $40,000 to $50,000 because his business was dropping off. Who knows? But either way, the sausage factory is now in the clear. The smell ain't coming from there. But here's where I call bullshit again. Because you see, while I have not smelled the death of a human, I have smelled a dead animal, and that shit'll make you gag. And how do you find the dead animal? You smell the funk. And then you start sniffing around till you find the spot that the smell is so overpowering that you know that the animal is nearby because the smell gets stronger the closer you are to the source. So if a human smells infinitely worse, and this odor has hung over the neighborhood for 4 to 5 years, as people are walking the block, ain't no goddamn way that they couldn't tell that the smell was 1,000 times worse in front of Anthony's house. But I guess, I always talk about how we see and don't see. I guess that can also apply to we smell and don't smell. So Anthony done broke up with his girl. He ain't got no job. And the women start coming up missing again. And these women are being reported missing by their families. But the motherfucking police didn't take it seriously. Let me tell you about these dirty motherfuckers. These people were going and reporting their people missing. And do you know that the police would tell them some shit like, well, it's the first of the month. She'll be back in a couple of days. Let's give her a chance to dry out a little bit. She'll be back. Just smoke a few more rocks. She'll be back. You dirty motherfuckers. Because guess what? If it were Bethany or Suzette, the police, the FBI, the CIA, Homeland Security, everybody would be on this motherfucker. even if they were drug addicts. But black women were just disappearing off the face of the earth in this small community. I mean, okay, from the perspective of the police, one, that's a terrible thing, but it's just one, right? Could have been a coincidence. Who knows what happened? Two people, that's troubling. It kind of make you frown your forehead up a little bit and make you say, that's a little odd. Three people missing? And most people will start to say, wait a minute, something ain't right here. Four people missing? Houston, we got a problem. Five people missing? It's a goddamn serial something out here on the loose. Mr. Policeman, can you do your job? Can you run the data? Can you get the molasses out your ass? No? Oh, okay. Now it's on the families to try to do the leg work. They have got to put in the work to try to find their missing loved ones. I'm talking about daughters, mothers, aunties, cousins, nieces, all melanated women coming up missing from a smaller microcosm of the larger black community of East Cleveland. And what do these women have in common? They like to smoke a little rock. That's all. Oh, and they black. But that was enough for nothing to be done. So the families are out here doing the leg work. They're putting up missing posters that have pictures of their loved ones on them. And they're just asking the neighborhood for help. Any information you can provide. Anything. We just need a clue. Give us a bone. Give us something. So they're putting up these flyers all around the neighborhood where the people like to congregate. But somebody going around taking the flyers down. If you look at videos about Anthony, you will see several neighborhood people give interviews. It's a typical hood, and by hood I don't mean anything negative. I literally mean a neighborhood, a place that people live amongst each other every day. Anthony was not a stranger to the neighborhood. He was a regular, a fixture of the neighborhood even. They say at Anthony's house for his peoples, he would have cookouts and fish fries, and they be playing chess and drinking malt liquor. Oh, my Lord! That sounds like a time was being had over there at Anthony's house. His house was the house you could go and get out the elements and smoke your dope comfortably if that's what you so chose to do. See, Anthony is textbook definition of a hood nigga. We talking about people that lived in the same hood for years, the ones that know everybody and all their business. People seeing the comings and goings, and people that speak to one another when they see each other on the street. Y'all know what I'm talking about. If you have lived in your neighborhood for any amount of time, you get a feel for who's who drive what time somebody might usually get home. That's neighborship. I don't necessarily mean that they were hanging at each other's houses, but let's just say that they weren't the New York type of neighbors. These people actually speak and wave and shoot the shit for a little bit outside if they see each other. That's not a knock on New York, so don't y'all come for me. But y'all know, y'all don't do it like that. Anyway, back to Ant. So he had lived in East Cleveland all his life. He ran with people that like to partake of the rock. The type of people that keep a stem on them just in case they run into some crack. They knew him as either Tony on Imperial or Crazy Tony. I love my people because if nothing else, we got a nickname for your ass. These neighborhood people knew Anthony, and they knew that the neighborhood local crackheads were saying that Anthony was crazy. I mean, he got the nickname Crazy Tony for a reason. So the hood knew about the rumors. They heard a couple of these stories, right? So Tony mixing it up with the people who like to smoke. And some of them come back to his house. And the one thing I want you to understand is that they all kind of knew each other in some way, form, or fashion. Think of it like 6 degrees of separation, right? If you were at the spot where the others were at the same spot and y'all were doing some of the same shit, in this case, partaking of the pipe, y'all kind of know each other. If you see somebody enough times, a friendship or an acquaintanceship forms, right? So these women loosely know each other or know of each other, right? They see Tony. He got a house. He like to smoke a little bit. He don't mind buying you a little piece of rock if you a little low on cash. So of course, the women would go hang out with him. Sometimes they even sought him out. I mean, they had a habit, and he was good for a hit or two. The only thing is, sometimes it just wasn't the hit that they was expecting because women were reporting that they had to escape this nigga because he was beating and raping them. And again, there was that goddamn smell. I know we've talked about this before about how the smell of death, rotting, decomposing humans, how it smells horrible. Yet, despite the tax paying citizens of East Cleveland calling anybody that they could, I'm talking health department, city works, the police, asking somebody, anybody, somebody come over here and do a survey. Y'all need to come take some samples and do some testing, do something. Where the fuck is the EPA? One of the neighbors even called a councilman to complain about the odor of decay, but nothing was done. But I bet y'all if East Cleveland was 90% white, it would have been a different outcome. But y'all ain't hear that from me. Nobody came. And this would be a theme that just keeps being repeated in the experiences of the women who had the bad luck of being a part of the story of Anthony Sowell. So let's talk about a few of these experiences from the women that lived to tell their tale. Vanessa Gay was a victim of Anthony's potentially killer smoke sessions back in 2008. And it's crazy because the day that she met Anthony, she was at war with herself. She was fed up with the drugs and she was just aggravated with everybody and everything. She hadn't smoked nothing all day. In her mind, she was just trying to figure out, should I go home to my husband and my kids or should I stay out here in these streets? And while she's trying to figure out what she gonna do, this dude walked by and she hear him say it was his birthday and he was all alone with nobody to smoke crack with. Well, Vanessa was like, we can't have that. Her motto was to never let a man smoke alone. So they're going to go back to Aunt's house and celebrate his birthday. And as they walk along, they are having normal conversation about cooking and recipes and shit. Just two normal people talking, shooting the shit. And as they are walking, people are giving Anthony dap and, what's up, Aunt? Hey, Aunt, you all right, Aunt? So she's thinking, he got to be an okay dude, right? This just further puts her at ease, right? This gonna be fine. And so Vanessa says they get to Anthony's house, and as soon as she stepped into the door, the air changed. She says a feeling of doom came over her. She said it was musty and stinky in his house, and she wanted to leave, but she thought, shit, I done walked all the way over here. I might as well stay and at least go and hit me some a little bit. Maybe I'm just being extra. What's the worst that can happen? If she only knew. You see, Anthony had a whole bunch of locks on the door, and when they got inside, he locked each and every one of those locks, and some of them needed a key to unlock the deadbolt. So once all shit was locked, they were in. And she says the house was pitch black and funky. And when she asked him about the smell, he said it was the sausage factory, right? And as she was walking through, it was dark in the house, but she noticed that there was old food and rotting meat in the kitchen, so she thought maybe that was what's contributing to the smell. They walk deeper in the house and go upstairs to the third floor. And up on the third floor, there's a bathroom and there's two bedrooms. And as they're walking by, she can't really see, but she can tell one of the rooms is like covered in plastic. Maybe he's doing some remodeling. She doesn't know. The other room up there is Anthony's bedroom. And so they go in his bedroom and he turn on some lights and she sit down on the side of the bed and they start chit-chatting and shooting the shit some more. And after about 10, 15 minutes of small talk, she asked Anthony, so, we smoking or what? Anthony looks at her and he asks her if she has a pipe. And she's like, of course, this is my American Express card. I never leave home without it. And she takes her pipe out and she gives it to Anthony. Anthony loads it up. Now, mind you, he's got his back to her. He light it and take a hit. Baby, when he turned back around, it was showtime. Vanessa says, quote, it was all bad after that. Vanessa would never hit the pipe because Anthony punched her dead in her face. And from that point on, beating and raping was non-stop. Vanessa says she didn't fight him because she knew if she did, he was gonna kill her. She said while he was beating her and raping her, he was ranting and raving about his ex-girlfriend and about how she did him wrong and how all the women that smoke crack had to be punished. And then he'd rant, 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 and then he'd stop. And he'd go back to having a normal conversation. He was telling Vanessa stuff like, you don't even deserve what I'm finna do to you. What the fuck, nigga? You know I don't deserve it, but you gonna do it anyway? That shit didn't stop him at all. She says that he was brutal. But through it all, Vanessa didn't challenge him in any way. Everything he said, she was in the A-man corner. When he was ranting and raving about the crack smoking whores that did him wrong, she was like, you know what, you too good of a man. Them hoes was wrong. Fuck them hoes. Everything that she needed to say to stroke his ego and make him feel comfortable about what he was doing to her, she did that shit. My God, that's a strong woman. Not many could have done that, but it worked. He kept telling her, "I throw your ass in the closet and forget about your ass." And she was like, "Baby, please don't do me like that." She finally worked up the nerve the next morning, once daylight, to ask him could she use the bathroom. And he allowed her to go to the bathroom. Of course, he walked with her to the bathroom, and she gets in the bathroom, and there isn't any tissue. So he gave her an old rag that was all crusted up and told her to use that and just throw it in the corner when she was done. And she says in her mind, she thought, they'll just find my DNA in this. If I can get out of here to freedom, I can prove that I was in this house. So she does her business and throws the rag in the corner and come on out the bathroom. So as they're walking back to Anthony's room, remember there's another room on this floor, the one that had the plastic in it. And now that it's light, she can see. And she says that as she passed the other room that had that plastic in it, she sees something that blows her mind. She sees a body wrapped in plastic that ain't got no goddamn head. And she says she freaked the fuck out in her head. But she never once let one piece of emotion show to Anthony. Again, this woman is stronger than anybody I've ever had the pleasure of knowing or not knowing. For 3 days, this horror went on. 3 fucking days? I can't even imagine it. On the morning of the third day, she said she woke up and Anthony seemed to be having a conversation with himself. He was mumbling and pacing and he's just mumbling, she gonna tell on me. And when he seen she was awake, he turned around and he told her, I don't know if I should let you go. You gonna tell on me. Quick on her feet, despite all that she had been through, she gives him the answer that frees her. She says, what's to tell? Shit, it was a little rough, but that ain't that. We straight. And she looking at him dead in his eyes and she really trying to sell it to him that everything is all right. So she tell him, you know what? I'm gonna come back. We gonna do this some more, right? And that motherfucker tell her, well, you know what? I get paid on Monday. Come on back over here then and we can do some more. Nigga, what? But it works. He allowed her to get dressed and they walk out the room and Vanessa says that she is careful because she don't believe it. She thinks that he's still gonna kill her. So she want to walk side by side with him. She don't want him behind her. She does not want to walk in front of him. She wants to be in lockstep with him. In every step, she is closer to freedom, closer to being away from this monster. She got to keep her face impassive. She cannot let it show anything other than the fact that she wants to be here with Anthony. A true shero. She was able to hold on and keep it together, to keep this man calm and make it out to the other side of his front door. She said when she got outside, she could barely walk. Her face was all beat up. She was barely able to remain upright and yet no one helped her. She said she was scared to sit down and just rest a minute on the curb because she thought Anthony was going to pop up at any second and finish out the job. So as she's walking slowly, she see a payphone. She make her way over to it and she called the police. And she tells them everything that has just happened to her. And do you know what they told her? They told her that she had to come to them, that they're not going to come over there where she at, even after she's told them everything that she's gone through. How tragic. Imagine if she had called animal control and said that there was a rabid dog that had attacked her, they would have sent somebody to catch that dog. But a human life didn't warrant that much attention. So Vanessa said, fuck it. Don't nobody care. I'm through with this shit. Just fuck this shit. So she can't make it no further. Where she is, there's an abandoned house. And she just goes inside the abandoned house and just lays down. Because she ain't got no more energy. She don't have nothing left in the tank. She can't make it another step. She ain't got no hope. The people who are supposed to protect and serve have decided that she wasn't worthy. They made her feel like she was less than human. She laid in that house for 3 days before she was able to get up. And when she got up, she went back to life as she knew it before the attack. because she thought maybe the streets would handle the situation for her. Tell a few people what happened. Surely street justice will take place in this matter. But that was not the case. Didn't nobody snatch Anthony ass up. Didn't nobody kick his ass. Life just kept moving on. Now this next one is a doozy. I gotta tell you about this lady named Sean Morris. And I'm telling you, Sean's story is crazy. And as I'm telling it, you're gonna swear I'm lying. I promise you, you're gonna swear I'm lying. But there is actual footage of this story that I'm about to tell you. So if you don't believe me, you can go in and look it up for yourself. So, Sean Morris. Sean met Anthony. And Sean, like many of the other women, she liked a little piece of the crack rock, right? And so on October 20th, 2009, Sean and Anthony crossed paths, and he invited her back to his house to smoke a little crack rock with him. And she was down with it. So they walking through the neighborhood, going back to Anthony's house. And close they get to Anthony's house, she smelled that fucking smell. And of course, Anthony tells her that it's the sausage factory. They get to Aunt's house and the smell is worse. But that doesn't stop our girl Sean. They go into the house. And even though she's about to throw the fuck up because the smell is so overpowering, she literally can't throw up because Anthony has grabbed her around her throat and is choking the life out of her. He says that if she screams, she's dead. And he started walking her deeper and deeper into the house. And this is a pretty nice sized house if you haven't figured that out by now. So as they are walking through, passing by the rooms, she sees something that she thinks is some straight up fuckery. She's like, was that a body? And naturally, she starts screaming because it was a body. So she realizes at this point, clearly, you're a killing motherfucker. So why wait till later? Let me try to see if somebody gonna hear me holler. Well, Aunt wasn't having none of that. He cold cocked her ass and then started closing all the doors and windows to try to keep the sound inside. Now, at what point exactly all of this is happening, it's unclear. But what we do know, what happens next, is Sean is jumping out of a second story window, butt bookie ass naked. Baby, Sean hit that ground and bounced, y'all. And she is down for the count. Now, mind you, I told y'all this is a lively type of neighborhood. It's not a sleepy place. And motherfucker saw this naked woman jump out the window from Crazy Anthony's house. But before they could process what the fuck they had just seen, the next thing you know, Anthony come running out the house, butt ass naked too. Like, you can't make this shit up. This nigga is running to the side of his house where she fell. Dick just swinging in the wind. By now, the neighbors done got their bearings about them and they go over to see what the fuck this nigga over here into. Now, Aunt is standing here, naked as a jaybird, standing over the body of a naked, unconscious bitch. And he tells the neighbors, hey y'all, this my woman. I'm finna take her back in the house. Everything all right over here. She do this shit all the time. Y'all just gonna mind your business. Nigga, what? Thankfully, the neighbors are not falling for this line of bullshit he trying to feed them. They was like, nah, bruh, we finna call somebody, an ambulance or something to come see about old girl. And so, again, Anthony is still standing here with his dick out to the sun, trying to argue with these people and convince them that it is perfectly normal for a woman to leap butt naked out of a second story window. This shit, nigga. Now, mind you, Ray's Sausage Factory got cameras all around the sausage factory. And so they got this whole thing recorded. So when I tell you that you can go on YouTube and see it, you can actually go see her jump out the window. So they call an ambulance. The ambulance comes and they're going to take an unconscious Sean to the hospital. Aunt tells them that him and Sean have been doing drugs all day and she accidentally fell out the window. But check this shit out. When Sean regained consciousness the next day, she asked the nurse can she get her a phone so she can call her husband. And the nurse told her, oh, baby, it's all right. Your husband already know. He rode with you in the ambulance. What? You mean to tell me this nigga Aunt didn't get arrested at the scene? Well, to be fair, the police eventually did go to his house, but he wasn't there, so they just leave. And when they go to the hospital, Sean refuses to speak with them, and so they just let the shit ride. I, I don't know. Like, what kind of I don't give a fuck about the community policing is this? I mean, first off, when they got to the scene and the fucking smell of death, That should have been enough to put them on alert that something over here isn't right. And when they see that the report is about a naked woman that jumped out the window, surely that would have warranted a look inside of the house just to make sure everything is okay. But I bet if this same scenario had happened to a white couple, they would have checked to make sure Becky was not being harmed or held against her will. But I keep saying these crimes committed against black women are discounted like a motherfucker. And the police will believe any cockamamie story a motherfucker put out there and just walk the hell away. You say the bitch got ran over by a Pinto, driving by a fat bitch? Okay, fine, works for me. Like, who the fuck? So Sean, when she gets discharged, this bitch just walk off into the sunset like she wasn't just in a house of horrors. Like she didn't know what he did to her, this nigga was quite comfortable doing. What about the next woman? Like, Lord Jesus, I don't never want to smoke no crack. The way it desensitizes and removes the common sense and common decency from a person, man or woman. Like, Lord have mercy. I'm just exasperated with everybody at this point because my heart aches for these women, the things that they've probably gone through and had to persevere through. But then at the same time, I want to shake the shit out of them to get some help and leave this life of drugs alone. I know it's easier said than done, but Lord, the danger that lays in wait in unexpected places is real. And the police can eat a dick, cause they just willfully ignorant. This nigga house and his name is known to them. How do I know that? Well, because a month before Sean jumped out the window, there was another woman that had a similar experience. You see, Latandra Billups, she knew Anthony from around the way. And that September 22nd, 2009 to be exact, she saw him at the corner store one day and he had two 40s in his hands. And so, Latandra said something slick like, oh, one of them for me? And Aunt was like, shit, bid it up, let go. And so they ended up going back to his house. And like I said, Latandra knew him. She had been at his house before, but this time, instead of going up to the third floor where they usually would go, they went to the second floor. And so Latandra sits down and she getting comfortable, thinking she about to be poetic justice up in this bitch and end up getting mollywopped. This nigga started choking her out. So much so that she passes out. And somebody that's passed out can look like they are deceased. But in Latandra's case, she came to in a little minute. But Anthony thought she was dead. And now that Lazarus has arisen, he flipping the fuck out, talking about you gonna tell on me. I know you gonna tell on me. And it is in this moment Latandra knew that this nigga really was crazy. So she said what she needed to say to get up out of there. She tell Anthony, you know what? Ain't nothing to tell. We good. How about this? I know you spent that money. I'm gonna give you $50. I'm gonna go get that money. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna give you $50, and I ain't gonna tell nobody. This just between us. She must have sold it pretty convincingly because he lets her go. But Latandra does go to the police. She does tell them what he did, and I ain't talking about she called him. Like Vanessa, she did what they told Vanessa to do. She went to the police precinct, gave them her story. Well, what did the police do? There was no sense of urgency. It took them 3 weeks before they even called her. And then they finally do decide to go arrest Anthony on October 29th, 2009, more than a month later, but it's 9 days after he assaulted Sean with that whole jumping out the window shit. But when they go, he ain't home. But finally, I don't know if something clicked or if it's just because this time they have an arrest warrant. So if there's a warrant, they're coming in your house to make sure you're not in there hiding. So they come in Anthony's house and they are searching. And when they get to the third floor of the home, they bust down a door and it finally registers to them what this God-forsaken smell that is not the sausage factory is. They see the bodies of two women, and they can tell that these bodies have been here for a long time. So they're still searching the house looking for Anthony. They go down to the basement, and what do they see? A freshly dug grave. Oh shit, it's on now. And where the fuck was Anthony at when all this was going on? This nigga was at his sister's house around the corner, playing the game with his nephew. Well, Anthony's house, the whole block now is full of flashing Christmas lights, and so a neighbor who knows Anthony, who's a fixture of the neighborhood, she go around to Anthony's sister's house and was like, "Hey, bruh, the police is over there searching your house." Anthony jumps up and was like, "Oh shit, it's all finna come out now. This nigga crunk. He like give me a ride back around now," and they go back, and he is watching them as they are searching his house, uncovering all his secrets. Ain't that about a bitch? A sick, twisted, diabolical motherfucker that wanna watch. The police and the crime scene techs, they set up shop at Anthony's house, and over the next few days, they find more graves in the basement, in the backyard. These women appear to be strangled. Now, word has gotten out that they pulling bodies out over there on Imperial. And so the families of missing women, they start to show up with pictures and offering to give DNA samples to be compared against the bodies. And they hoping like hell that their loved ones is not in this house of horrors. But they also looking for closure because it appears that there is a good chance they will be found here. By the end of the day on October 30th, the police thought that they had found all the bodies. At that point, a total of 6 bodies had been found. Boy, were they wrong. They bring out the cadaver dogs and find 5 more. Now that all the bodies have been found, the search is on for Anthony's ass now. Every cop in Cleveland wants this nigga off the street. And so the next day is Halloween. That afternoon is dreary, it's raining, and the police are just on their beat, and they see a man walking down the street in the neighborhood that resembles their suspect. He got on a hoodie, but he looked just like that nigga we looking for. So they stop him and they ask him for his name. And he gives them a fake one. And then he like, "Shit, I just look like old boy. Y'all had done already checked me earlier today. I'm straight." The police was not trying to hear that. But they like, "Nah, bro, you finna go down with us." And the whole way while they taking him back to the precinct, Anthony is telling them that they have the wrong guy. It wasn't until he was in the police precinct and they are getting ready to fingerprint his ass that he finally comes clean. I mean, Anthony, it wouldn't have mattered at that point. They was finna confirm your ass with them fingerprints. So Anthony is in jail, and they interrogated him on November 1st and 2nd. Anthony was playing in their motherfucking face. He's just toying and taunting them, through dropping hints that, 11, that's all y'all got? You sure? That number seemed mighty low. But he never actually admitted to doing anything. But when pressed, the nigga told them that he didn't remember what happened with these women. He said, "Shit, I just would wake up and shit felt like a dream, so I ain't really think much of it." On November 3rd, he was charged with 11 counts of murder, kidnapping, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence for the women that were found decomposing in and around his house. At the time, Anthony was 50 years old. Now, they gave that ass a $5 million bond on some nigga you ain't going nowhere type of time because he faced the death penalty if they convicted him. It took the authorities about 3 weeks to identify all the bodies. The victims were 38-year-old Crystal Dozier. They found her in the backyard. 31-year-old Tashana Culver. 25-year-old LaShanda Long. What's terrible about LaShanda's case is they only found her skull. It was in a bucket in the basement. They never found her body. But remember, Vanessa and Sean them said that they seen a body that didn't have no head in it. Could that have belonged to LaShonda? Possibly. Then there was 45-year-old Michelle Mason, 53-year-old Tanya Carmichael, 44-year-old Kim Yvette Smith, 47-year-old Imelda Hunter. Imelda was the cousin of Crystal. They were cousins. They found her in a grave buried on top of her cousin. Oh my Lord. Then there was 45-year-old Nancy Cobbs, 33-year-old Talicia Fortson, and 48-year-old Diane Turner. All black women, all drug users, all human beings that didn't deserve to have their lives cut short in such a horrific manner and then be discarded as if they were nothing more than debris. Now, it would take 2 years for Anthony to stand and face his crimes in court. And on June 27, 2011, the trial started. For Ohio, it dominated the news. They even took the jury on a field trip to the house over there on Imperial Avenue. That house had been boarded up and fenced for the last 2 years to keep people out of it. And at the trial, witness after witness testified to Anthony's character. He was both a good guy and a monster at the same damn time. The men who testified said that he was straight, He was a little throwed off, but he all right. And the women said that he was all right, but he would lure them in with alcohol and drugs and, offering them a place to stay to get off the streets. And sometimes he'd be cool as a fan. And then other times it was like a switch was flipped and he would beat them and strangle them and rape them. And then afterward, he'd be calm and start offering them clothes or money, food, alcohol, crack, like he was apologizing or some shit. But even though they went through this with Anthony, they would come back again and again. Man, I gotta tell you, watching Vanessa on the stand was painful. Like, I felt it. I felt her pain, her trauma, her resolve to live, her will to change her life. For me, it was like, not only was she reliving the trauma, but as she was doing so, she was beating herself up for going into the house, for dealing with that man, for being on drugs. I felt for her like we all fall down. We have all done some shit. But my God, we should be able to make a mistake that doesn't cost us our life, our dignity. The trial lasts about a month, and the case goes to the jury on July 19th, 2011. The jury was made up of 7 women and 5 men, and it took them about 3 days to deliberate. And on July 22nd, 2011, Anthony was convicted of 11 counts of murder, 73 rapes, kidnapping, and he was sentenced to die. His execution date was October 29th, 2012. Now, this nigga did get on the stand, not in his own defense, but to make just a generalized statement where he gave a old bullshit ass statement, if you want to call it that. This nigga say something to the effect like, I'm sorry, y'all. I don't know what came over me. This is not my typical behavior. I can't explain it, but that's all I got for you. Nigga, what? Like, if you don't get the fuck on up out of here, I hope you get bent over every day in prison and you can't find the soap on the floor at all for all the dick that you gonna be getting. Like, I hope they tear your ass apart. I told y'all, God is working on me. I ain't where I want to be, but I ain't where I used to be. But because this was a capital murder case, the appeal process would go on for years, right? They had this shit locked up. He was not gonna die on October 29th, 2012. I mean, don't nobody die that quick in the United States. But guess what? Anthony does die. He died in prison February 8th, 2021 of a terminal illness before his death penalty could be carried out. He died at the Franklin Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. Anthony Sowell was a textbook profile of a sexually sadistic serial killer. Instantaneous rage, followed by a calmness, is a pattern that's consistent with the heating up and cooling down cycle of behavior, as well as Anthony had a growing appetite for violence. Because think about it. Each year, he upped his number of women that he assaulted. In 2007, only one woman went missing that ended up in his house. And then there was about a year gap before the next victim came up. In 2008, 4 women were linked to him that disappeared. In 2009, 8 women were linked to him that went missing. 6 of those 8 were found in his house of horrors. This suggests that Anthony's ass had gotten addicted to not only crack and malt liquor, but the thrill he got off sexually violating women. He needed more and more to satisfy his sadistic needs and his insatiable lust. Now, I don't think it's much of a leap to think that Lori leaving him was the trigger for his behaviors after he got out of prison. But she wasn't the cause by any stretch of the imagination, because we know that before you went to prison, you was a brutal, raping motherfucker and possibly a killer, because it was a whole lot of women that were found dead around the corner from your house, right? It's just that all of the women that lived to tell their tales say that Ant was still obsessed with Lori. As he was going off on them, he be talking about how much stuff he had bought Lori and talk about how she was an old ungrateful crack smoking bitch. So the nigga still had a hard on for Lori, but he couldn't get at her. He was taking his rage out on other black women. Y'all, it's hard. I ain't got to tell y'all because my audience is made up of a lot of melanated women. It's hard being a black woman in this world. And since starting this podcast, I've really had a chance to see how being a drug addicted black woman is just that much harder. because they are subjected to a world of casual brutality and degradation where sexual favors are bartered for drugs and a place to lay their head. These women don't have the luxury of thinking about the potential dangers because all they can think about is the potential high. Factor that with embarrassment and shame keeping them from telling their truths. And it's a world that we don't like to think about. We like to see it and don't see it. And because of this, men like Anthony Sowell, they can thrive and it doesn't matter to nobody until it directly affects you. When it's your mama, your sister, your cousin, your auntie, your niece, then everybody want to know why, how, what we gonna do. This don't make no sense. But we gotta do better now. Anthony was a registered sex offender that lived right smack in the middle of an area where women were being attacked and snatched up. Not one law enforcement personnel made the connection to the sex offender that had a history of snatching up women and terrorizing them. Even though every time he was off the street, the women stopped going missing. Nobody made that connection. Not the law and not the hood. So before I leave you today, I want to know how many of you have had a neighborhood friend, homie, acquaintance that you hang out with from time to time? Now, I ain't talking about you over there smoking crack. Maybe y'all smoke a little weed together. Maybe you treat your nose a little bit. Maybe y'all drinking a little something, something. Maybe he got a game and y'all over there playing Xbox. I don't know. Maybe he just okay with you stopping by from time to time when you trying to get out the house as you walking through the neighborhood. The dude you see all the time and that you assume is harmless. Do you really know that man? And it ain't always a man. Sometimes it's a woman. Do you really know that woman? Do you ever really know somebody that you don't live with? And I ain't saying that every man is deranged or is a rapist or is a murderer. I'm just saying he could be. She could be. So keep your guards up and your location services on. And with that, New Orleans Nation, I bring you to the end of our story of our Melanin Mayhem maker, Mr. Anthony Sowell, aka the Cleveland Strangler. An old nasty piece of work that terrorized the women of East Cleveland, Ohio in broad daylight for years and got away with it. Ooh, child. That was a for real. I feel like I need to take a bath or a breath mint or something for his ass because he left a real bad taste in my mouth. Where my damn Listerine at? Now, all that's left for you to do is hit like and subscribe right there on your screen. Just look down, like, subscribe, and then hit share and let all your homies know about your new favorite true crime podcast, Boop. Because you know it ain't no fun if your homies can't have none. And if you feeling like it, only if you feel like it, I would love it if you left a review where you're listening to this podcast. Just hit that 5 star if you don't feel like typing. Then I need you not to keep this gem of a podcast to yourself. I need you to share. Please share me. Be free with it. Tell all your family, tell all your friends. Put me in the group chat, boop. If you're on social media, you can find me on Twitter at Melanin Mayhem PC. On Facebook and Instagram, you can find me at Melanin Mayhem Podcast. And if you know of a melanated mayhem maker that you would like for me to do an episode on, drop me a line over at melaninmayhempodcast@gmail.com. I got you. Until next week, I need you to stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. It's one love, New Orleans Nation, and I'm out.